Somewhere under the leaves on this trail is a stone that is 3.5 billion years old, not 3.5 million, billion. It is granite that was already ancient when the first living cells appeared in the sea, older than almost anything you can stand on anywhere in North America. It is here, in a small city park in southwestern Minnesota, exposed in the walls of a river gorge that most people have never heard of. This is where we walk today. We are in Alexander Ramsey Park, on the edge of Redwood Falls, a town of about 5,000 people in the Minnesota River Country, roughly 110 miles southwest of the Twin Cities. The park wraps around the gorge of the Redwood River, just above where it joins the Minnesota. At around 256 acres, it is the largest municipal park in the state of Minnesota. Our walk today is about 3 miles, along paved paths and through the trees above the river. It is a short hike over some very deep time. The park itself is easy to underestimate. There are 4 miles of paved trail, a campground, picnic shelters, a small zoo, and a scenic drive that loops down into the valley. Families come for the playgrounds and the shade, but the ground it all sits on is a narrow, wooded canyon cut by a small river, and that canyon is doing something that almost no other place in Minnesota does. It is showing you the floor of the continent. Locals have a nickname for it. They call this the Little Yellowstone of Minnesota, which sounds like the kind of thing every county says about its prettiest park. Here it is closer to earned. The Redwood River drops through a steep gorge of bare rock, spilling over ledges and cascades, with wooded bluffs rising on either side. In a state famous for being flat, this abrupt little canyon feels like a secret, and the rock that makes it is the reason we came. The stone in these gorge walls is called gneiss. Around here, geologists call it the Morton Gneiss, after the little town just down the valley, part of a body of ancient rock that runs along the Minnesota River. It is Archean, which is the oldest chapter of Earth history, and it has been dated to about 3.5 billion years old. That makes it one of the oldest rocks exposed anywhere on the planet, and along with the nearby Montevideo Gneiss, the oldest intact piece of continental crust in the United States. You are looking at a survivor from a world with no plants, no animals, and barely any oxygen in the air. Reach out and touch it as you pass, because you will not do this in many other places. Most of the time, this kind of ancient basement rock is buried thousands of feet down, hidden under younger stone and soil, only reached by drilling. Here it is at the surface, right beside the path, cool and hard under your hand. The pink and gray swirls in it look almost like marble cake. That pattern is a record of unimaginable violence, and it is worth understanding how it got there. The rock did not start out swirled. It began as a plain gray granite, cooling slowly in a magma chamber deep beneath the surface around 3.5 billion years ago. Then, roughly 1 billion years later, 2 fragments of the young Earth crust collided at this exact spot, the way continents still collide today. The old granite was buried, squeezed, and heated until it very nearly melted. Ribbons of new pink granite were forced into it under enormous pressure, folding and smearing through the gray. When rock is cooked and deformed like that, without ever fully melting, it becomes gneiss, and the folded bands of light and dark are its signature. In the Morton gneiss, those bands are unusually beautiful, streaks of pink and salmon and charcoal gray wrapping around pale eyes of feldspar. Stone cutters gave it a trade name, rainbow gneiss, and quarried it for buildings across the country. Some of the grandest stone facades in American cities are cut from this Minnesota rock. But the finest place to see it is still in the raw, in the walls of this gorge. It is hard to hold the age of it in your head. 3.5 billion years is most of the entire history of the Earth. If you compress that history into a single day, this rock formed before dawn, and everything you know, the dinosaurs, the mammals, the whole human story, happens in the last few minutes before midnight. And here it is, plain and gray and pink, quietly holding up a picnic ground. The oldest thing for hundreds of miles is also one of the quietest. For most of the last 2 million years, you could not have seen this rock at all. Great sheets of glacial ice advanced south out of Canada again and again, burying southern Minnesota under hundreds of feet of ice. When the ice melted, it left behind a thick blanket of clay, sand, and boulders called till, smoothing the whole landscape into the gentle farm country we drove through to get here. The ancient gneiss was sealed underneath all of it, out of sight, sometimes beneath more than 100 feet of debris. What uncovered it was a flood, one of the largest in the history of the continent. As the last glacier retreated, its meltwater pooled into an enormous lake, and when that lake finally burst its southern rim, it poured out as a colossal river the geologists call Glacial River Warren. That torrent carved the broad valley the Minnesota River now flows through, and it stripped away hundreds of feet of glacial till in the process. Along its edges, where tributaries like the Redwood cut down to meet it, the flood scoured the land right down to the ancient rock. The gorge we are walking is one of those cuts. So the shape of this whole park is a piece of plumbing left over from that flood. The Redwood River is a small stream, far too small to have carved a rock canyon like this on its own. It simply took over a channel the great meltwaters opened, and it has been trickling through the exposed gneiss ever since. Every ledge and outcrop you see from the trail was scrubbed bare by ice water and never covered again. The river gets the credit, but the flood did the digging. Come down toward the water and the sound changes. The Redwood is a modest river, brown and quick, running over shelves of that hard old rock. It is cold enough and clean enough in stretches to be managed as a trout stream by the state. In autumn, when we are walking, the bluffs above it turn gold and rust, and the water carries a steady traffic of fallen leaves. Follow it upstream, and it gathers itself for its one real performance. That performance is Ramsey Falls, the centerpiece of the park and the reason it first drew visitors. Here a tributary creek pours over a lip of rock and drops in a bright ribbon into the gorge, framed by dark trees and mossy stone. It is not a giant waterfall, but in this flat corner of the state it is a genuine one, and it has been photographed and painted and picnicked beside for well over a century. A footbridge crosses near the base, close enough to feel the spray. On a still autumn day, it is the kind of place where people lower their voices. Below the falls, the river keeps stepping down through a series of smaller cascades, sliding over the bare rock in sheets and chutes. Down near the edge of town, the Redwood drops once more over a low dam that was built back in 1902, and that ledge of falling water is where the town got its name. The whole park is really one long staircase of moving water on ancient stone. It is a good place to stop and sit and let the noise of it fill in around you. But this valley was a named and living place long before there was a town or a park. This is Dakota homeland. The Dakota people called the wider Minnesota River Valley Cansayapi, a word that means where they mark the trees red. For generations this was their country, a landscape of prairie above and wooded river bottoms below, of bison and deer, and the rivers that tie it all together. To understand the name on the entrance sign, you have to know what happened to them here. Walk the quiet upper trails and it is easy to feel how good a place this was to live. The gorge offered shelter from the prairie wind, along with water, timber, game, and stone. People had been in this valley for thousands of years before any of the events we are about to describe. What changed everything was not the land but a set of promises, made on paper, a short way up the river from here, in the middle of the 1800s. In 1851, in the Treaties of Traverse des Sioux and Mendota, the Dakota gave up around 24 million acres of that homeland to the United States. In return, they were promised money, food, and 2 narrow strips of reservation land along the Minnesota River. One of the government posts set up to manage this, the Lower Sioux or Redwood Agency, stood just a few miles from where we are standing. But the promised payments came late or not at all. Traders cheated the people, and by the summer of 1862, the Dakota on the reservation were starving while food sat locked inside the agency warehouses. On the 18th of August, 1862, that pressure broke into war. Bands of Dakota, led in part by the chief Little Crow, attacked the Lower Sioux Agency and the settlements strung along the river valley. What followed was 6 weeks of brutal, close fighting up and down these bluffs and prairies, with heavy losses among settlers, soldiers, and Dakota alike. It was one of the deadliest conflicts between the United States and a native nation, and it happened right here, in the country this park sits in. The river we have been walking beside runs straight through the middle of that history. The war ended in defeat and catastrophe for the Dakota. Hundreds were taken prisoner and tried in hasty military courts, and on a single day after Christmas in 1862, 38 Dakota men were hanged together in Mankato, the largest mass execution in the history of the United States. The survivors were driven from Minnesota altogether, exiled to bleak reservations further west, and the state seized and sold what remained of their land. An entire people were expelled from the valley that had been their home for centuries. That is the silence underneath the birdsong here. Which brings us, uncomfortably, to the name on the gate. The park is called after Alexander Ramsey, the first territorial governor and an early state governor of Minnesota. In September of 1862, in a message to the state legislature, Ramsey declared that the Dakota of Minnesota must be exterminated or driven forever beyond the borders of the state, and his administration offered bounties for the killing of Dakota people. He was, in plain terms, one of the chief architects of the expulsion. The largest park in Minnesota, sitting on Dakota homeland, carries his name. It is worth walking with that for a moment rather than around it. A place can be genuinely beautiful and still carry a hard name and a harder history. Nothing about the Gneiss or the falls or the autumn leaves is diminished by knowing this, but the visit is not really honest without it. Many people in this region, Dakota and otherwise, have argued for years over that name on the sign. When you stand in this gorge, you are standing in more than one story at once. And the Dakota did not vanish. A short distance down the valley, the lower Sioux Indian community, Cansayapi, is a living tribal nation again on a piece of its old homeland, with families, a government, and a determination to keep the language and the history alive. The people who marked the trees red are still here. That matters when you read the park signs, and it matters when you look out over this valley that was theirs long before it was anyone else's. History in this gorge is not finished. It is still going on. The park as a park has a gentler and much shorter story. By the 1890s, townspeople had discovered the gorge as a place to escape the summer heat, riding out to picnic by the falls and camp along the river. It was so popular that in 1911 the state of Minnesota made it a state park, one of the earliest in the system. For decades it was a beloved local getaway of shady trails and Sunday outings. Then, in the 1930s, a national crisis arrived to reshape it. During the Great Depression, federal work programs sent young men into parks all over the country to build with their hands, and several of them came here. Crews from the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Works Progress Administration laid out roads and trails through the park and raised sturdy shelters and bridges from local timber and stone. It was hard, honest labor, meant to put the unemployed to work and to leave something lasting behind. Much of the framework you walk on today, the paths, the picnic shelters, the stonework, dates from those years, and they built with the one material the gorge had in endless supply. The most famous of their works is the Swayback Bridge, a low, gently dipping span faced entirely in granite, finished in 1938. It crosses the river inside the park with the solid, handmade look of everything the Corps built, and it is beautiful enough that it now sits on the National Register of Historic Places. The stone in its facing is the same ancient rock the gorge is cut from, quarried nearby and set by hand. So the bridge is billions of years old and less than a century old at the same time. That is a very Ramsey Park kind of object. You feel that doubleness all through the park. The shelters and walls have the heavy, deliberate weight of Depression-era stonework, massive timbers set on foundations of gray and pink granite. It is craftsmanship built to outlast the people who made it, and it has. Running your hand along one of those walls, you are touching stone shaped by unemployed men in the 1930s, made of rock formed before life existed. The park keeps folding time together like that, without ever making a fuss about it. Near the main entrance there is one more surprise, a small free zoo that has been part of the park for generations. It keeps animals native to this region, bison and elk, white-tailed deer, prairie dogs, a few goats and birds, and it stays open to visitors all year round. The bison in particular are a quiet reminder of what this valley held before the plow and the town, when great herds moved across the prairie above these bluffs. Children press against the fences here the way children have for decades. It is modest and old-fashioned and much loved. By the middle of the 20th century, the state was reshaping its park system, and in 1957 it handed this one over to the city of Redwood Falls to run. That is how a former state park became a municipal park, and how a town of a few thousand people came to own the largest city park in Minnesota. It has stayed in local hands ever since, cared for by the community and by a group of dedicated friends of the park. There is something fitting about that. The gorge belongs, in the end, to the people who live beside it. Down along the water, the park does its simplest work. The redwood is managed as a cold water trout stream, and on a quiet morning you will find anglers standing in the riffles below the falls. Kingfishers work the pools, deer come down to drink, and the current keeps up its steady conversation with the rock. None of this needs a plaque or a story. It is just a small, clean river doing what it has done ever since the flood uncovered its bed. And then, because every good local park seems to need one genuinely odd thing, there is a tank. Parked near the campground sits a decommissioned Sherman tank, a war memorial that has stood in the park for generations, and that half the town seems to have climbed on as children. It is completely out of place beside the ancient gorge, and that is exactly why people love it. It is a reminder that a park is not only geology and history, but also the accumulated affection of everyone who grew up here. Ramsey Park wears its layers openly. We are here in the middle of October, which may be the best possible time. The hard maples and oaks on the bluffs have turned, so the whole gorge glows in gold and copper and deep red, and the low autumn sun reaches all the way down to the water. The crowds of summer are gone. It is cool and bright and quiet enough to hear individual leaves come down. 3 miles of trail on a day like this is less a hike than a slow, grateful walk. So take one last look from the rim before we go. In this one small park there is rock from the dawn of the earth, the scar of a continental flood, the homeland of a nation and the wound of its expulsion, the handiwork of Depression-era crews, a waterfall, a trout stream, a zoo, and a tank. Almost none of it is loud. It is a modest city park in a small Minnesota town that happens to sit on top of nearly the whole history of the world. All you have to do is walk slowly and pay attention. If you are ever out in southwestern Minnesota, turn off the highway at Redwood Falls and give this gorge an afternoon. Stand on the old granite, listen to Ramsey Falls, read the names on the signs, and think about all the stories folded into them. It is one of the quietest, extraordinary places I know. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.